That's right. It is Orange and Blue today. Here, Cecil Lammy, Andrew Mason. And of course, we've got our canned rock music as we wrap up the week that was in Mobile, Alabama at the Senior Bowl. Mace, you were out at practice today. I was in Pensacola doing a 4-hour radio show. So, going to be leaning on you today, brother.
Well, I'm just starting to go through the stuff that we got because, of course, I was shooting video. So my notebook is not as good as your notebook is, at least right now. It will be a couple of days from now after I've gone through it. But I'll tell you one name who jumps out to me today, and just making a lot of catches today. Mason Taylor, the tight end from LSU.
Okay.
Of course, certainly has a very strong football lineage. And if I'm looking at players who went up from day one to day two to day three to where just okay on day one, but on day three, like, man, that guy's just jumping off the page. Mason Taylor, at least among the tight ends and running backs where we've got a little bit of a focus here this week, he's the guy that jumps out to me.
Yeah, Mason Taylor, because of that athletic profile, Jason Taylor's son, Zach Thomas's nephew, and certainly showed with that athletic ability and hands and concentration. As the week goes on, he is getting higher on draft boards, and it just goes to show you how deep this tight end class is. How often have we talked about tight end and not really yet brought up Mason Taylor and what an option he could be for the Broncos, because he totally is.
Yeah. I mean, not round one, but I mean, watching him this week, watching the all-around nature of his game, because he will get in there, stick his nose in, and not only be a willing blocker, but having the ability to drive and be an effective blocker. I mean, Frank, it was funny, like with Harold Fanning Jr., we expect to be talking about him as a pass catcher, but the best moments he had this week were as a blocker by and large. Mason Taylor just kind of checks the all-around boxes to where, to go back to your phrase, declaration of influence, and what I say about, kind of trying to mask your intent. When Mason Taylor's out there, you can disguise, and you're not, it's not a tell when he's in there, because he does have the all-around nature to his game right now. I think somebody that drafts him may be getting their starting tight end, and not like a situational tight end, but their all-around base package tight end right away, based on what I saw this week.
Yeah, and we talk about consistency, I would say let's kind of begin there with Taylor, but also with these tight ends in general. Terrence Ferguson, the most consistent all week long.
Yep.
And these tight ends are as advertised. We can even go back to our Shrine Bowl tight ends. They are as advertised. So this class, maybe not as thick as running back is, and we'll get to running backs in a little bit, but I think from you and I being on the road in Dallas and then being on the road in Mobile, hey, this isn't some sort of dream scenario. These tight ends are real, they're legit, and they're thick. They're full.
And I would say running back is going to be deeper just because of the overall volume that you see on an annual basis. I mean, college football doesn't have a problem producing running backs who can contribute at the next level. Running backs and receivers, even in a quote-unquote bad year at those positions, you're going to find viable options. Tight end is very hit or miss. It's why definitely you talk about two tight ends this year in the draft, because the quality of tight end you get on day 3, if you're picking a 5th-round tight end, that's going to be like a 3rd-round tight end a lot of years because of how deep this class is. It's another reason why, if you're the Broncos, I think you feel pretty good about where things stand heading into the offseason as you start making your offseason plan, because your offseason plan is going to involve looking at your needs and saying, which ones can we fill in the draft? Which ones can we fill in free agency? Or are we going to do both? With a tight end position, even though whoever you draft might have an on-ramp needed until they're all the way there, with this tight end position, you look at it and say, okay, I think we can solve this in the draft and have guys like Adam Troutman and Nate Adkins, and specifically Troutman, kind of be the bridge to that. Okay, he's dependable. He can make a dynamic catch from time to time. He's smart. He's going to be in the right place. Troutman can kind of be a bridge to perhaps somebody that you draft this year who's a little more dynamic. And Troutman, the other layer onto that is he's basically another coach out there. He's going to help that young tight end or tight ends make their transition to the NFL fairly effectively.
Yeah, and I think you're doubling up on tight ends. I think you're doubling up on running backs. And if you want to transition to that position, Mace, I would just begin it and saying, what do you want? We have to see what the Broncos desire, because if you want two down thumpers, they're there. If you want change of pace back, just receiving backs, they're there. If you want backs that can be on all three downs that don't have to come off the field, guess what? They're there too. So do you want two of those three down guys? Do you want one two down banger, but then one change of pace? And this goes on the talent that's already on your roster. What do you think of Audric Estime? What do you think of Julio McLaughlin? And I think the type of back the Broncos pick is going to tell you what you think of the guys that are already there.
I mean, the allure of Devin Neal, if you go in that direction and wait and then pick him, third round, or I know you hear maybe even like the fourth round or fifth round, perhaps on Devin Neal. But the allure on him is at 220 pounds and with pass catching ability, he can be all things. He doesn't have to be a situational back. Now, that being said, Devin Neal would not be the only part of this. I mean, Sean Payton will do a timeshare. I mean, Alvin Kamara, go back early in his career, look how he was splitting time with Mark Ingram, right? Just because you have that guy that can line up on every down doesn't mean they're going to be a bell cow. We probably won't see a true bell cow in this offense. But can you find somebody who has those all-around abilities to where if you don't need to take him out, you don't have to take him out? If you want to go up tempo and keep your personnel, you can leave him out there. I mean, I think that was a reason why in 2023, why did you see Samaje Perine playing a lot of games late when the Broncos were in comeback mode? It was because they were in no huddle. They needed to have a personnel group that could get set quickly and maximize what could be done tactically. And thus, Perine, maybe not the best at any one thing, but pretty good at everything without a huge hole in his game, ends up getting the playing time. And maybe so, I'm not saying you're looking for someone specifically like Perine who's just going to come in at the end of the game, but the point being, you need one back who is pretty good all round, which means they've got to have pass catching ability. They've got to have blocking ability. And oh, by the way, they need to be of a frame and a size to handle an every down pounding. You wanted that to be Javonte Williams. Alas, he wasn't good enough taking handoffs in terms of his production on the ground to be that guy, which is what put the Broncos into this, this mess of trying to figure things out with three different guys. And of course, Blake Watson was in there for a game as well.
Yeah, I would say quagmire, right?
Yeah.
You're in a quagmire at the running back position. Maybe Devin Neal is your guy out. And
giggity.
We've seen this time and time again at these all-star games, Mace, as we kind of recap the week. Guy will be hot on the first day, maybe fade a little bit. I wasn't there today, but what's your opinion on Brashard Smith, on the SMU kid? Did he kind of fade a little bit compared to where he was the first day when we were like, hey, he's looking better than Devin Neal that day? Neal being very consistent in the 2 days of practice that I saw, and maybe Smith taking a step back yesterday. What about today? Anything in your notebook there? And again, the film study that you'll be doing and I'll be doing tonight, preparing to get on a flight, get back to Denver, we'll be able to tell. But we've seen guys kind of start out hot and fade a little bit. Maybe Smith is that guy.
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty accurate. Not that he had a bad day out there by any stretch of the imagination, but Devin Neal ends the week as the best back that we saw on that side, on that roster today, or out there, I felt. I mean, that's where, again, you kind of come down here, you get your eyes on these players, and either you have some feelings confirmed or you have to kind of go back and reassess. I think I came down here thinking Harold Fanning Jr. would be the best tight end. That didn't prove to be the case. Doesn't mean he's not going to work out, but not what we were hoping to see. Whereas I'd say, someone like Mason Taylor, for example, is a guy who I've got a little bit different opinion of. I want to go back and rewatch some of his LSU footage to kind of say, okay, what did I miss here in going over him? Devin Neal, for me, kind of consolidated his position as, at least for the Broncos, the back who fits best if you're not going for one of those early backs. I still think, okay, Ashton Genty, if he falls to 20, I think that's a sweet spot for him. That's not too high. You're using a first-round pick, but it's not at a premium spot. That's a great place to get Genty if he falls there. If you're talking about waiting a little bit, maybe you trade down if Genty's off the board. Are you talking about Omarion Hampton there, late 20s, if you can make a little bit of a trade down, or maybe even trade back into the end of the first round and pick him around 31 or 32? Absolutely. That's where those guys make sense. But if you decide to wait and get into day two, and someone like Devin Neal, I think he'll be sitting there. I think what we're kind of gathering here is, I think he's going to be sitting there if you want to pick him in the middle of the third round.
Yes.
And that's perfect. And look, let's not discount third round backs. Certainly Sean Payton isn't going to do that. That's where he found Alvin Kamara. You can find great backs there. The quality is going to be there.
Yeah, quality this year is going to be there for sure. Now, you mentioned trade back from 20. Just overall looking at this class and kind of wrapping up our week here, the problem with that, Mace, is because if somebody good falls to 20, why would the Broncos take him? Genty, Tyler Warren, whatever. And then here's the other problem. Jackson Dart, quarterback from Ole Miss, Jalen Milroe, quarterback Alabama, I don't believe in 2 days of practice, Mace, that they kind of catapulted themselves in. Now, there were people talking like Milroe could be a first rounder. We hear a lot before the Senior Bowl. And then you put eyes on him and you're like, well, that's not going to happen. Jackson Dart, you heard, he could work his way into the first round. But because those two things, in my opinion, didn't happen, I'm not sure how hot 20 is going to be in terms of somebody's going to want it because, the Broncos don't need a quarterback. We want Jackson Dart there. I'm not sure. George Payton would love to trade back. I'm just not sure how that scenario looks right now.
Well, let's have the conversation with, say, Walter Nolan out of Mississippi then, who had a great week on the defensive line down here. Had a great day today, I thought. Now, would there be demand for him if he was sitting there at 20? Absolutely. Problem is, I think the Broncos could use him, and that's where, we maybe start to have a different conversation. And that's where the depth of tight end and running back come in, because what if you do say, okay, let's get ourselves a beast there, like Nolan. Let's get him there at 20. Then you get into the second and third round class of running backs and tight ends. So maybe you're not getting that elite guy at those positions, but you're probably still able to get quality because of how the draft board falls. I'll say this, I would feel a little bit better if they could say, if for example, if they stood pat and picked a defensive lineman like Nolan at 20, said, okay, what could you do to turn that second round pick into pick 31? Hopefully not sacrifice the third round pick this year. If you could get away with making a deal like that with a future asset in 2026, when I think the draft is not going to have the depth that this year's draft is going to possess, then I think you may be able to have some conversations there about having your cake and eating it too. Because I'd argue that for the Broncos, where they stand right now, dare I say, if they moved up and sacrificed a second round pick next year to do it, I'm not sure that's the worst thing that they could do in terms of where this team is right now, because you're going to get improvement from the young players on the roster. You presume you're going to get improvement from Bo Nix coming back for year two. You ought to be able to go into this offseason thinking, okay, we've got most of our core. Who are some final pieces that can get us truly into Super Bowl contention? That's the conversation the Broncos need to be having. And it may mean, I don't want to sacrifice a future first round pick, but I'd be willing to maybe look at trading a second round pick in 26 in order to move up and still keep your third round pick while turning that. I believe it's number 52 overall, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so, yes.
52 into 31.
Yep. The Broncos could do that, and George Payton's going to be dialed in on next year's class to do just that. The luxury picks, I would say, and just kind of the wrapping up the week, and we're going to do a Tez Johnson show on Friday, so everyone stay tuned for that. But if we just talk about luxury picks, like another receiving weapon, and Johnson will be tomorrow's conversation, a pass rusher. I saw enough late-round guys in these two games to go, you know what? I don't mind some darts there. Hey, they already have pass rushers. Yeah, throw another dart, right? And I think that this class, while maybe not as top-heavy as running back and tight end are, if you talk about just offensive weapons and you talk about maybe potential rushers there as well, yeah, I like some of these late-round darts we've seen.
If they can play on special teams, then that gives them a chance for a role. And if you've got a surplus of edge rushers, you can trade from the surplus as well. I mean, I think the other interesting thing that I think to watch as the Broncos go through this offseason is what do they think of Jonah Ellis and what do they think of Dondrea Tillman, and do they think that they can build off that? I mean, you like to say you may never be more blank than you are right now. I don't think that that's the case with Tillman or Ellis. I think there's a lot more there. And so that becomes then you start getting into roster planning. I mean, everyone probably wants to re-sign Nick Bonito. I don't know the decision is made on Nick Bonito whether to re-sign him or not just yet. Certainly doesn't have to be made. And I don't think you even consider kind of doing anything until you get to the summer months. Like there's no reason to re-sign a player before you finish OTAs and minicamp.
Right.
Like when you've got a guy who's going into that fourth year, there's no reason to do it because like if you re-sign him in May and he goes out, tears an ACL in a non-contact drill during minicamp, then why did you do it? Like the player can only drop his value during OTAs and minicamp. That's why you don't see anything until you start getting a training camp. Like Quinn Miners, when he re-signed in July, that's the earliest you do a re-signing of a player in his fourth year.
Yep. Broncos going to be monitoring all that and then some. Well, Mace, you and I both have to hit the road in various capacities so that we can get to our destinations. But before out of here, just kind of a general feel about the week. Our fantastic conversations at dinner and late night conversations, watching film, watching practice together, and just kind of overall thoughts on this class and what we've seen over the last 6 days, basically.
It's nice to see Bronco needs in pretty good alignment with the strength of a draft. Some years that's been an issue. Last year it wasn't, obviously. You had Bo Nix and sitting there still at number 12. I mean, goodness gracious. I mean, he would go earlier in this year's class. I think more than a few picks earlier. So it works out pretty well for the Broncos. I come away from this week looking at a bunch of players who I think have the possibility to immediately help them and not necessarily being first-round players, too. That's the exciting thing. I think there is the potential for another absolutely nailed draft class, maybe a draft class that proves as impactful and successful as George Payton's first draft class in 2021, in part because the Broncos don't have as wide a target area in terms of what they're looking for compared to where the roster was 4 years ago, but the strength is clearly there at positions the Broncos are looking to target.
All right, everyone. More of our coverage of the offseason for the Denver Broncos available at denversports.com. But, Mace, before we're out of here, we're going to have people help us out on YouTube. How can they do just that?
Like,
comment,
share,
subscribe,
hit that notification bell.
Ding. So that you
never miss
vid. That's right.
Not as good timing when we're in different states.
Yes,
like we are right now.
You in Alabama, me in Florida, soon to be in different states again for tomorrow's show. Tez Johnson show coming up. He's Andrew Mason. You follow him on all the socials at Mace Denver. I'm at C Salami saying OBT's BFD. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned and stay frosty.